Hey there, and welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Thursday, August the 31st, last day of August 2023, about 9:15 a.m. Central Time. I am Rob Howe, joined as always by Scott Docterman from The Athletic. This is our fourth season doing this, Scott. I don't know where the hell time is going.
We could say that every year nowadays. It's like every year we're getting closer and closer to the end. Not to be too morbid.
And I think it's appropriate that we started this thing during a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So here we are, year 4, but certainly not a lacking of interesting storylines, I would say, especially over the last calendar year. It seems like every day there's something new and something over the top dramatic when it comes to Iowa athletics.
Yeah, and I think, there's always a high level of anticipation for Iowa football around here, right? It is the front porch for sports in the state. It just is. It's the most popular individual sport in the state of Iowa, and people just look forward to it. We've talked about it before. It's an event. It's time with family and friends. There's just a lot that goes into it. And I feel like this year there's been even more anticipation because of the storylines you've talked about, McNamara and company coming through the portal, the Brian Ferentz contract, just the things that we needed to get to the football season to see is now finally 2 days away, and I'm ready to exhale.
Yeah, no kidding. It feels like for me, doing the combination of realignment and gambling this summer is just it's really not been a summer, and granted, when we were doing preps, Rob, way back when, and exclusively, there was a lot of work in the summer as well, but this seems to be the busiest summer I can remember since maybe 2020, which was obviously very challenging for a lot of reasons. But this is it's been every day. And then when it finally came to football, it's like, oh crap, football's upon us. But people are excited, and I'm glad to see that. And it would not be that way without the transfer portal. So I think the opinions have changed. If not, they should, about the transfer portal, because if there was no such thing as a transfer portal, I would probably have maybe a junior college quarterback. Maybe Alex Padilla stays. Maybe it's an injured Joey Labus. But instead you have, whether it's a banged up Cade McNamara from Michigan, questionable / probable / doubtful, or you have Deacon Hill, Wisconsin. So I think really overall this is that's a plus for Iowa. It's a minus for its opponent this weekend, and but overall it's added to the interest, no question.
And we'll kick things off here with the quarterback's availability, and the truth is we don't know. And from I saw you listen to Kirk last night. I was doing some things and could not listen to it, but he gave an update. It sounds like it's a positive update, that maybe he's somewhere between questionable and probable, questionably probable, probably questionable, not probably questionable. I don't think that works, but I think he wants to play. The coaches would like him to play. It's a matter of, can you put him out there? Is he prepared to play? And is he, if you're not going to do damage to him, is it worth putting him out there with, him not being, what I'm saying here? He didn't get a ton of work. He didn't really work last fall. He didn't work in the spring completely. He's been limited this August. He's a veteran quarterback, so he knows what he's got to do. And I asked him about preparedness the other day, and he gave a good answer, just saying, I know what I need to do to prepare film work wise and things like that. But you also don't want to, he's really your meal ticket, right? He was the guy out of the transfer portal that you needed. And I know you don't think he can hurt himself, but re-injure himself, but you don't know.
That's the line that Kirk Ferentz is probably straddling right now and going back and forth on is, in a perfect world, yeah, he's going to play his guy. If he's just feeling okay, but you knew that he can't do any more damage or whatever to it, then all right, kind of like an ankle. An ankle is one thing, where it's like, hey, it hurts, tape it up. I'll move around and, we'll gut it out. And then next week will be better, probably. But this isn't that. This is a muscle. And if he was to scramble and all of a sudden, tweak it again, then you're talking about him missing time against Iowa State on the road. And that's no joke of an environment. And their defense is really good. They're going to have struggle, no question, offensively. But but then 2 weeks after that at Penn State, Michigan State at home, possibly. That's why you've got Cade McNamara here. Now, you don't want to overlook Utah State. Blake Anderson's a really good coach. This is a team that went to a bowl last year. It won the league 2 years ago with 11 wins. But they were decimated by the portal. They only have 9 returning starters. Their quarterback is a returner, but he threw 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions last year. You would think that barring a collapse offensively and significant mistakes offensively, you would think that you would be able to win this game even somewhat comfortably with a quarterback who would struggle. And so that's where Kirk's lying. I mean, yes, he wants Cade McNamara out there. That's his guy. And he needs to play. He needs to complete passes, and he needs to hand off the ball and see things and see some real action. And plus, that's why he's here. He wants to play football, but it's a lot more important to have him handing off the ball at Jack Trice Stadium and Beaver Stadium than it is at Kinnick on Saturday. So that's why I think it's a game time decision. Like he said last night, he's medically cleared to play. That's a good thing. But beyond that, is that what's best for him and the program in the big picture? And that's why Kirk Ferentz makes all the big bucks.
And it should be noted that Cade himself said he's not able to take part in all portions of practice as of whatever that we got him on Tuesday. So he'd gone through Tuesday practice. And I don't think he's missing a lot. And again, he's able to prepare, and he's a veteran quarterback. So you don't worry as much about, if he's going to, Utah State's going to throw something at him that he's not ready for. He'll be ready for that stuff. And provided the offensive line holds up and, they're able to run the football, which they should be able to, they should be fine whether he plays or not. And who knows? They get up by enough. If he does play, then you get Deacon Hill some reps anyway.
Well, yeah, and that would be the perfect scenario where you go out there, say he has 4 possessions in the first half, or the first quarter and a half, and they score on 3 of them. And it's like 17-0. And it's like, hey, we're going to shut you down pretty quick here, because it makes sense. I mean, you're talking about, and this is where you've got to figure what you've got your opponent as well. And when you look at Utah State, let's look at their defensive numbers last year, Rob. First of all, they only bring back 5 defenders, but anything is possible. I mean, somebody could hit you late, and they could be blocked.
Think about the play he got hurt at Kids Day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the defenders were backing off there. If that's a live game, he's going to get drilled.
Right. Well, in a live game, he's probably more decisive. It was like he was running, and then he's like, should I stop or not? And then that's, it's the half stepping that gets you beat. It's the people pulling up, not the people going full bore that they do this. But Utah State last year was 105th in scoring defense, 113th stopping the run, and allowed 194 yards rushing per game, allowed almost 4.8 yards per carry, up to be 108th. They were last in the nation in penalty yards. They were 121st in turnover margin and 129th in red zone defense. This is a defense that you should be able to say, all right, offensively, and especially up front, because one of the things that I look back on, Rob, was last year, they played 7 of the top 14 defenses in the country, and Iowa was one of them. They didn't play them. They just practiced against them. But out of those 7 teams that had top 14 defenses, they allowed a combined total of 16 games where they allowed 25 points or more. So basically 2 and a fourth game. So they had to play against some kick-ass defenses. This is not one of them. This is probably worse than any defense that they've had to go against. So I think what does that mean for Deacon Hill, Cade McNamara? Ideally, in a perfect world, you want Cade McNamara out there, and then you want him to rest. I think that's perfectly, but I think Kirk Ferentz has to go through this whole thing and go, look at the big picture too. So you want him to have work, you want him to get better, you want him to play because that's why he's here. But
I hope he plays. I'd love to see him play. I've been waiting to see him play. Let's get him out there. But I also don't want, the kid he's gone through a shitload already with injuries. You don't want him to, face a setback this early on, something that lingers throughout the season.
Well, that's the point. At this point, it's like if he tweaks it again and then he can't play in Ames and maybe he sits out again against Western Michigan. I mean, he sat out for 2 weeks before he even practiced again. And then and that's been now 2 weeks, going into this, or it was last week. I'm sorry. So then he's got like 9 days roughly. That's why he's questionable, Rob. It's not probable. It's questionable.
No, it's definitely questionable. And that's the designation that Kirk gave on Wednesday, which is basically what he paraphrased the week before.
Yeah.
That it was questionable if you were listening to what he was saying, and that his player was not in practice and hadn't practiced for, at that point, like 10 or 11 days. But let's talk offensive line, Scott, because that is probably where a lot of focus will be on Saturday. Is how much we've talked about it a ton, and we talked about the anticipation for the season. And that's one of those things that I'm anticipating, is wanting to see what progress has been made up there. I would expect you're going to see more than 5 guys. I would, the depth chart as it stands now, and take that for what it's worth, because it's a depth chart, and we know things can look different on Saturdays than they look on the depth chart. But from left to right, you have Mason Richmond, Nick DeYoung, Logan Jones, Connor Colby, and Jennings Dunker. So the 2 transfers are not there, but at least I would expect Rusty Feth to play. I'm not sure where Parker is health-wise, if he's going to, where he is and how much time they can get him. But I don't know. Does Bo Stevens get action? He started 10 games last year. Mm-hmm. Who else am I leaving out? Tyler Ellsbury's the backup center, right?
Yeah, he's Jack Dotzler at left tackle, and Dejon Parker right now is the backup at right tackle.
So how many of those guys do we see, do you think?
All of them. I don't know about Parker. I'll say that. I don't know what his health situation's like. But I anticipate this to be a comfortable win for Iowa. Again, based on the team they're playing. This team is not nearly as good as last year's team they played in the opener, South Dakota State. South Dakota State has the type of team where they might go to a New Year's Six bowl if they were in the bowl championships. At least they would have last year, I think. Definitely, I see Rusty Feth rotating at some point. Probably Bo Stevens rotating. They usually stagger those series a little bit, but I could see every second to third series. Now you'd like to get somebody in there for Logan Jones once in a while, especially because as hot as it's going to be. You want to get people out there, and you don't want to wear down your unit because they're going to be pretty tired anyway. And
you never want to wear down your unit, Scott. Thanks for that one, folks.
All right. I like the volleyball match last night. I set it up to you, and you came right
Spiked
back.
It.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
we can recover from this.
Yeah. But
Jeremy Chaplin's a guy who's popped up, right? His name's popped up, potential backup center, and then Ellsbury's working there too. So you at least got to feel good about the depth. I mean, these guys have gotten sand kicked in their face for the last 2 years. If they're pissed off, they should be ready to roll.
Exactly. I think I brought this up before, but when we look at we always seem to do this because Kirk's been around for a quarter of a century now, but we look back at kind of past is, predicts the future type of thing. And the 07, 08, there is some similarities there because in 07
I think you could throw 01 to 02 in there a little bit too. I hesitate to compare anybody to 2002, that bar.
Yeah.
But that 2000, 2001, it reminds me a little bit of this too, with guys that were thrown into action before probably they were ready. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Robert Gallery going from, they had 3 tight ends, shift the offensive line, and then ultimately become All-Americans in NFL, first or second round draft picks. So that's an incredible feat in itself. But, more recently, 16 years ago, you had a unit that was really comparable to last year in the 07 season, where they gave up 46 sacks, and you had a very inaccurate quarterback, a struggling offense even to run the ball. And then they were throwing in true freshmen. Brian Bulaga was a true freshman, and Julian Vanderbilt was a redshirt freshman, and Raphael Eubanks, and Dace Richardson was hurt, and Kyle Callaway played left tackle, and just kind of this mishmash. Travis Mead was in there a lot. And the next year they settled on things. Rob Brugman came back healthy, and they stabilized, and they cut their sacks down by 20. They ended up running instead of 3.5 yards per carry, they ran for 4.8. Of course, they had a new running back come in,
He was decent.
Yeah, he wasn't so bad. So, and I think this running back's pretty damn good too. So I look at this unit last year. I don't know if I want to say that word anymore. I look at this group and, last year they only got 5 starts out of an original scholarship upperclassman in Jack Plum. Because Nick DeYoung was a walk-on initially.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you look at what they have, is everybody but Dunker is an upperclassman. You've got 25 career starts for Richmond, 17 for DeYoung, 24 for Colby, 13 for Jones, 34 for Feth, where he was a second-team All-MAC performer, 19 for Parker when he was at Division II, granted, 10 for Bo Stevens. Dunker's had a start. Ellsbury's had a couple of starts. So you have a unit that has played. And yes, they absorbed a lot of hits, but I think they're going to be okay there. I'm not going to predict good. I'm not going to predict 08 good. I'm not going to predict certainly not 02 good, but I'm going to say that this should be a representative unit for what Iowa wants from its offensive line. And I think that's
leaving it alone. One unit joke per podcast.
Man, I can't even type that word in the next couple of weeks without laughing. Whoa. All right. So I do expect them to be capable.
And like you said, this should be a confidence builder.
Yeah.
Against this defense.
Mm-hmm.
This should be one where you could just, impose your will and then get yourself some momentum, get that chemistry built, that continuity. This is a good start, a good opponent to start with for a unit trying to advance itself.
The unit always tries to advance itself, Rob.
It's back on the rails.
Yeah, exactly.
But I won't promise there won't be another unit joke at some point in the podcast.
As long as we're talking about units and not Unix.
Let's talk about another unit. Let's talk about the receivers, another area of, that was addressed through the transfer portal. Addressed offensive line, addressed quarterback, tight end with Eric All, and then wide receiver. So I'm interested. I'm cautiously optimistic about this group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in the same boat because last year when you started adding up the losses going into this week, going into that first game, and you're going, they might only have Arlen Bruce. This is not good. And it wasn't good at all. It wasn't close. They had 166 yards in that opener. And so you're like, oh my God. And it looked every part of that. And so this year, having healthy receivers who are scholarship guys, and your top 4, I think here are decent. I think they're guys that you feel good about. I mean, Nico Ragaini, this is his 6th year. And He's been, I used him in my story today. I mean, I'm like, nobody really remembers this, but the 18 and the 20 classes rank in the top 10 of all time for average points per game in Iowa history. And he was part of that. And he had the most catches in 2019. So he's a guy that everybody kind of knows. He said yesterday he plays primarily out of the slot now. And I think that's probably a good thing. But, Seth Anderson coming in, he's going to be probably that underrated guy who came when he first got here. Everybody was excited about him. Then it kind of dissipated a little bit. Then he didn't practice in the spring. And then you're like, you forget about him. And then, of course, Caleb Brown shows up and then it's like, oh, Ohio State. I think he's actually going to be pretty good. I'm anxious to see if Deontay Vines can take that step, because last year it was just like throw anybody out there, and he got it, out there. He had 10 catches, and it felt like 75, for this offense. Yeah. And then Caleb Brown, of course, at Ohio, from Ohio State, he'll see his first significant action. And I don't think people should expect him to go out and catch 50 passes and be a third-team All Big Ten pick. But I think he can do everything Arlen Bruce did, except he's a better athlete, better version of that. And I think he's more capable of being a pass catcher.
Yeah, Nico was talking Tuesday about preparation, during the offseason and preseason. And I was like, well, what are some of the areas you guys really worked on? And it was identifying at the line where the one-on-one coverage is. They had trouble with that last year, where the matchups are, where you can gain an advantage. And that should be there with the tight ends that they have. The receivers should get plenty of one-on-one coverage to be able to, win those one-on-one battles. And that's what you need to do, and stretch the field, get guys out of the box. And, can the line protect to allow you time to get the ball down the field? And I wrote a story for Hawk Fanatic yesterday on the offensive line, and talking to Deontay Vines, I was like, I know you guys don't watch the offensive line much, but can you tell if it's better? And he's like, he goes, last year we get a little bit into the route, and the defense loves to yell sack, because you can't hit the quarterback, but if you get in his area, you can yell sack. He goes, this year I'm getting through my routes. I'm getting deep without having to hearing the defense yell sack. So we've heard offseason about, from the offensive lineman to George Barnett to Kirk Ferentz talking about how the offensive line is going to be better. The receivers are going to be better. It's good to hear players talk about little nuances like that show that there is improvement. It's far from a guarantee, but you take little victories where you can get them. And if those two positions, Scott, can be competent, then this offense will do what it needs to do to complement this defense and special teams better.
No question. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at, I think, of the two, you really need the line to be the better, if you're going to pick, but I like the receivers because I think with elite tight ends, an accurate quarterback, and a running back who I think is about to take off and become, a known name and a known commodity, that I think if you can have receivers who can stretch the field, who can get it matched up in some single coverage situations and exploit it, then these receivers can be really good, really effective for what they want out of this. And that's really what you need right now. They had some good receivers a few years ago, and they were very effective in 2019. It was just, there were a couple of pieces up front really that caused them the most problems. And I think a running game back too, I think it's kind of flipped at that position now. So by and large, if they could just get into their routes, be successful in getting open, finding openings. Because, last year there were just so many different areas where they failed. The receivers, when you have one scholarship guy, you don't have a full complement of talent available to run decent routes against good competition. to get open, and then you don't have the pass protection, and then you don't have the accuracy from the quarterback. It's just I mean, it's like I'm going to go sail down the Mississippi River in a canoe that's got a big hole in it. It just doesn't work.
Holes all over.
Yeah. And then, of course, the offensive coordinator takes the brunt of it, which, yes, he deserves some of the blame, but not all of it. And so now you feel like maybe you've got a motor and the holes are patched up, and maybe you can go downstream a little bit.
Yes, because I think if this offense struggles, Spencer Petras is gone now. Yeah. And I think more of the vitriol will be thrown Brian's way. I mean, now that they've added through the transfer portal, they've addressed personnel, so to speak, to upgrade the personnel, which, Kirk and Brian have told us, not in words, but in action, that it was personnel that needed upgrading. If you get new personnel and you still can't do it, then you're really going to come under fire. And I don't think we're going to see that this week. I think this week is just, okay, how might this look? Mm-hmm. And the context of this is not, we're not playing against Penn State or Iowa State's defense, in this week one. So keep that in context. But this is a game for guys to get well, to build some confidence, to get some momentum, to, even we talked about it. If Cade can just get out there and work and get some reps with the team on the field against another opponent, that could be super valuable. But everybody that gets out there on Saturday, if they can have positive performances, if they can, build on, the growing pains they had last year, if we could see that around the field, then that's what you're looking to accomplish on Saturday. Obviously, you want to win. And I think, as you said, I don't think Utah State's offense is going to do much in this one. So I don't think Iowa's going to need the 25 points to win this game.
No, I don't either. I mean, although I'll be anxious to see how if they cover or not. But
yeah.
What
is the number? I haven't even looked.
24.
Oof, that's a big number.
Yeah, let me see. I have it somewhere here. Anyway, but still, I look at this as not as a preseason game, because that's really kind of disrespectful when you start to get into that kind of terminology. But I do look at it as an opportunity for Iowa to feel like it can compete and play the way it wants to. Kind of, I remember one year they played against Northern Illinois, and you and I Northern Illinois had a couple of really good players, and they still won like 30-3, and I think that's fair. Even, run the ball. It's hot. The other teams, you're going to wear the other team out with your physicality and the way you do that. Just go do your thing. If you need to throw 15 or less passes, do it. Don't make any stupid mistakes. So if it's Deacon Hill in there, don't throw it into triple coverage. Make the makeables, as they say. This game's 24 is the number. So no, I expect them to score 25 or more, no matter what. And defensively, they just need to do what they do. And I feel weird because I've planned on writing about defense for a long time and then just kind of blown it off because it's like, oh yeah, it's Iowa.
Yeah.
the only real question marks are, okay, who's going to be out? Because Iowa has declined to release those names, and we've declined to talk about them, but they're going to need at least one in the secondary for sure. And that to me is kind of fascinating as to who lines up where.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if there's some things that maybe some folks aren't expecting when they look out on the field on Saturday in terms of personnel, because unless you've been under a rock, there's been a gambling investigation, and that there are others that have been implicated beyond Noah Shannon, who's come out publicly. The others have chosen not to, if they haven't come up as criminally charged too. That's the thing you've got to think about. NCAA violations compared to criminal activity, and what might the suspensions be from the governing body. So we'll see that on Saturday. We're not talking about it here because privacy laws, these people want to keep it private. We'll let them have their we'll honor their wishes, so to speak. But probably a good time here to take a break. So let me bring up my read here. This is a professional podcast here, folks. All right, folks. Let me find this. Where the heck is it? There we go. Support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Systems Unlimited. 50 years, over 50 years, providing great service to folks living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. We appreciate their work in the community and the support of the podcast. Scott and I will be back on the other side. We'll do our game by game breakdown for the season, and then we'll have some picks for you guys. Stay tuned. And we are back here on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Want to let you guys know about an opportunity. Let's call it an opportunity. You have to check out Randy Engel's awesome artwork at underthekitchen.square.site. That's underthekitchen.square.site. You can find pieces. Some of your favorite Hawkeye athletes, past and present, Tim Dwight, Spencer Lee, Keegan and Chris Murray, they're all available, as are others, reasonably priced, and they come with certificates of authenticity. That is underthekitchen.square.site. If you want to get your eyes on it instead of buying online, and if you're out of the area, I certainly recommend buying online. You get a pretty good feel for what you're getting and what you're adding to your Hawkeye room. But Randy will be at Fry Fest tomorrow, September the 1st, down at the River Landing. Give yourself some extra time. Got a little construction going on down there. But check Randy's artwork there. You can go there, purchase it, get your eyes on it, and figure out which ones you want. Buy a few, buy some for friends, Christmas presents, never too early for that. Check out underthekitchen.square.site or check out Randy at Fry Fest. Man, I am a little punchy today. I had to get up at 2:30 to drive my son to the airport. He's going to visit a friend in New Orleans. So,
oh wow,
I did get back to sleep for a little bit, but I'm still a little bit fuzzy. But we'll power through the rest of this. We're going to do our game by game predictions here, and then we'll do our picks as well. Where should we start, Scott? You want to go? I think we both have Iowa winning this week.
Yeah. Do you want to do Big Ten or you want to do across the board? But yeah, I definitely have Iowa winning this week.
Yeah, I've got, in the interest of saving us some time, I have Iowa 3-0 in the non-conference.
Okay, I do as well. I have two decisive wins and one. I would say tough game. I think is fair in Ames. The thing is, when you look at Iowa State's defense, the secondary is really good. They returned 4 out of 5 starters, and there's a couple who are All-American capable. I don't know if they'll get that. Now, they got dinged up quite a bit, I think, up front. Iowa State did, losing Isaiah Lee because he gambled on Texas beating Iowa State in a game, and then Iowa State actually won that 30-7. So I think that's that's laughable, first of all, but second of all, stupid. But they don't have the same players that we've seen over the years up front. No Will McDonald. So I think Iowa can be able to run the ball on them, but I still see that one as kind of a slug it out type of game where maybe they win by a couple scores.
Yeah, and that's trending towards being another very hot, humid day. If you look at extended forecasts, let's hope that changes by the time we get there. But depth certainly is a factor when the conditions are early in the season. And I think you look at Iowa State, and depth is a concern, different areas of the field. I think Iowa's in a little bit better shape, but we'll dive more into that game next week. But yeah, I think Iowa wins. Like you said, a slugfest in Ames, one of those feeling out field position. Let's kind of just not make mistakes. Let the other team make mistakes. That type of game plan that we've seen between these two schools since Matt Campbell has come on board, at least, and gotten the Cyclones rebuilt. Week 4 at Happy Valley, and that is a night game on NBC, right?
CBS, actually. Yeah, they took the night game that week because NBC has Ohio State Notre Dame at night.
Taking care of the TV partners.
Yeah, well, it'll be quite the scene. It will be also quite the struggle to get to the hotel in Altoona afterwards. but alas, that's my problem.
Yeah, I saw one of the Penn State's projected offensive linemen had to retire for medical reasons last night, and that's a little bit of a hit. He's been hurt though, so I'm sure they kind of had a feeling that was coming. But it's interesting when you read national analysts on, Michigan. This is the best team Jim Harbaugh has ever had, and this is the Penn State team that can break through finally and get through Ohio State and Michigan. Well, if Penn State wants to get through Ohio State and Michigan, it's going to have to beat a game Iowa team on that night. And my mind goes back to 2009. I think it's just natural to do that. But this is a different setup. It's I don't know. It's obviously Iowa's toughest game on the schedule. I think I was looking at this earlier, Scott. If this was earlier the month, I looked at this, and this is from my game by game preview. If you look at Vegas Insider, Penn State at 9.5 wins, and I don't know if that's gone up, and Wisconsin at 9 wins are the only teams on Iowa's schedule that have a win-loss total 7 or higher this season. So that gives you kind of some context to how important this game, if Iowa was able to get it. But I can't get myself to that point. Maybe after the first 3 weeks, I'll get myself to that point in week 4 to pick Iowa to upset Penn State, but I'm just not there yet.
I'm not there. I have Penn State winning 17-13. I have it as a big physical fist fight for 4 quarters. And remember what the game was like a couple of years ago too. I think Penn State has probably a little more potential, especially offensively, than it even did then. Sean Clifford is in the NFL. He's a backup quarterback now. Drew Aller is, 5-star. Nick Singleton, 5-star running back. They've got other players, as they always do. A little bit of a hit to the offensive line, but I think these two might be the best 2 defenses in the Big Ten. Now, when you look at Cade McNamara and Eric All, they connected on one of the biggest plays in recent Michigan history. The last time they were there 2 years ago, it was a crossing route, and he took it, I think, 45, 48 yards for a touchdown, and that was the game winner in Happy Valley that extended Michigan's winning season, or enabled them to get to the playoff. So Iowa's had success against Penn State. 1 2 years ago, 1 3 years ago. Did not play last year. Iowa will already have been in a really crazy environment in Ames. And for people who might poo-poo that, it is nothing to poo-poo that going there. They are hated. You go to certain places, Rob, and they have great environments, but they don't necessarily hate you. They'll say stuff, but that's it. Ames is different because Ames, they hate Iowa. And so they're going to be used to it. They're going to have to weather some pretty big punches. I'm not going to predict them to win, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they do, because why shouldn't they? I mean, Penn State's big game going into this is a home game against West Virginia. West Virginia is not very good. That's on this coming week. So they've got a couple other games in between there. I think I have Penn State winning, but this is one, to me, I expect it. And then remember the bad blood. It's there and it's obvious. I mean, it's known there. So it's going to be a pretty intense environment.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's been fun through the Kirk Ferentz era. This series has had some really, really memorable games and players that have played in it. And if Cade McNamara is healthy, he's the more proven quarterback of the two. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Aller is got, incredible pedigree, but we still have to see him go out and do that. And that's, as Cade is the key to Iowa's success this year, it really is. If Drew Aller can play at a high level, then I think Penn State can reach those lofty goals that are being put on it this preseason by some people in the outside. Game 5, Scott, is Michigan State. It would have been good if the old Michigan State coaching staff was still here after the Penn State. If it was Penn State, Michigan State back-to-back with all that hate, really could have dug our teeth into it.
Yeah, exactly. This was one of the great series of the Legends and Leaders era, and before and slightly after. And D'Antonio on one side and Ferentz on the other, and every other score was 16-13 or thereabouts, some variation of it. I remember when Kirk got his 100th win at Iowa. It was just a horrendous day weather-wise. It was 19-16 in double overtime, and Greg Castillo had an interception. And this Michigan State doesn't reflect that one. In fact, it's not the same as they were 2 years ago. With they've lost in the transfer portal. They become portal pirates basically, and they lose Peyton Thorne to Auburn and Keon Coleman to Florida State, two players who were really instrumental. Mel Tucker has kind of tongue-tied himself, talking one way and then reality is another, and vice versa, and all the way around. I don't like the way this squad is working. I think Iowa takes care of Michigan State decisively. I had it 31-13. Last time it was 49-7 that they played Iowa. I don't know if it'll be that decisive, but I think Iowa wins comfortably by multiple scores.
Figure I'll throw these out there too as we go game by game. Michigan State's win total at FanDuel is 5.5. MGM has them at 5, and then Caesars has them at 4.5. Those are low win totals for a guy making $9 million a year. So that's and they have to come to Kinnick too. So and Penn State, let me look up Penn State's win total.
I think they're at least 9.5.
Yeah, they're at 9.5. Yeah, they're still at 9.5. So if you think they're going to beat everybody but Ohio State and Michigan, take the over. And that's pretty much it, right? They're going to win their non-conference games. They get Iowa at home. So
the interesting thing about that, Rob, is that they play at Illinois before they play Iowa. So they're going to get a physical team. Now, I think they're better than Illinois, and they might win that one by 10 points or something to that effect. But what you're going to get with Illinois. You're going to get a physical football game and happen to go back to back against physical teams. That's going to be interesting to see how Penn State responds.
And just to go back, Utah State is 4.5 or 5 in the total. And then Iowa State, I think it's similar. Iowa State's 5.5.
Oh, they dropped to 4.5 yesterday.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah. There was another. Well, so I would bet the under, but I don't know if we want to talk about that with Iowa State. But
yeah, it is 4.5. I see that now. That's both at FanDuel and MGM both have it at 4.5. So we move on to who's after Michigan State?
Purdue at home.
Another rivalry. The Purdue rivalry. I think I've got Iowa winning this one 24-7.
I got it 27-13, but kind of the same ballpark. The one thing, they got a new coach in Ryan Walters. They got a good quarterback in Hudson Card, who was at Texas. Is he as good as Aiden O'Connell? Probably not. Aiden's, a pretty decent quarterback. He loves physical defense, and he's incorporating that with a spread. So we'll see how that works out for him, especially with some newcomers. The one thing that actually kind of makes me cringe a little bit with Purdue is that Purdue lost like 3 of its starters up front to the transfer portal when Braum left. And they went to, I want to say, Auburn and USC, and really decimated that unit. That group. And so I think we'll go with, I'll go with Iowa by multiple scores in this game. But I'm anxious to see how Ryan Walters puts it together, because he is a really good coach. But I want to see how they build, kind of a spread offense to go along with a physical defense.
And Purdue, FanDuel has them at 5.5, MGM at 4.5, and Caesar splits the difference, has them at 5 even. So another opponent Iowa will be favored to defeat. Who we have after that? At Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, at Wisconsin.
Biggie.
Yeah, I think this is the big game of the West this year.
You want me to take it?
Oh, you go ahead, man.
This game will be physical, and there won't be a ton of points. 17-16 Wisconsin.
Okay, you have Wisconsin. I have Iowa winning, same number of points, 16, but Wisconsin with 10. I think this is
take the under.
Yeah, take the under.
If you're not a student athlete.
Right. If you're not a wide receiver, take the under. Or a kicker. I'm anxious to see with Tanner Mordecai, how do they put this offense together at Wisconsin?
That's the interesting thing, right? With Purdue and Wisconsin Purdue's been kind of a high-powered offense with Jeff Brom, but just more of those looks in the division, at least for the last year of the division.
The last year, yeah. Well, you'll play Wisconsin. Luckily, they'll play Wisconsin every year. That could be famous last words like, "Why did you fight so hard to lose?" To a team 8 years in a row or something. But it's a historical series, and Purdue's fascinating to me because they ran that style of offense, but the defense was built opportunistic wise. It's like, okay, we're going to give up big plays, but we're going to make them too. We're going to blitz. We're going to be very tight with our coverage. And, so we're going to get interceptions. We're going to get fumbles. We're going to get sacks. And if we give up a big play, so be it, we'll get it back on offense. And then Wisconsin, of course, isn't changing its defensive structure very much at all. But offensively, it's completely different. I mean, they were 335-pound power running counter. Here's Braylon Allen, 240 pounds. They still got him, but then they're going spread and they're going a little more hurry up. And Iowa, I'm anxious to see how Iowa handles that because, and I'm also anxious to see how Wisconsin, when it gets to a point where, let's say Iowa stops them 3 and out, first 3 possessions or thereabouts. Do they decide, let's go back to what made us successful, or do they continue to dig deeper into that? So I've got Iowa winning. I think this is the game of the West. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive and tough, but I also think the next one could be as well.
Yeah, no doubt. There's some, and we'll get a look at the next opponent tonight.
Yeah.
When they play Nebraska. So Minnesota, battle for Floyd. Fleck is winless against Iowa. He wants this worse than bad. I've got Iowa winning this 23-20.
I've got this one is the Gophers. And this is my upset of the year against Iowa. At some point, you think that they're going to, whether it's let down or they're going to play an opponent that just plays a little bit above it. Gophers are coming off a bye week. We know how motivated they are. Even last week at the Minnesota State Fair, PJ Fleck was asked by a TV station, what are fans asking? Why can't you beat Iowa? And Iowa's going to be coming off of, what I guess I'm projecting as a pretty good roll. Beating Wisconsin on the road, probably at that point, you're ranked close to the top 10. And you're due for a letdown. And this team has been really close to Iowa the last 3 out of the last 4 years. So, including 2 straight at Kinnick. They haven't won in Kinnick since '99. I could see it going the opposite way. That said, that's just that's not. I mean, Iowa's going to be favored, but I don't know. I think it could go either way. But we have these two flipped. You have Wisconsin beating Iowa, and I have Minnesota beating Iowa. So
yes, 2 of the trophy games, which usually are hotly contested, and we'll see how that one shakes out. And then the week after that one, Scott, we at least have the novelty of Wrigley Field, because I don't think the opponent is going to be very resistant.
Yeah. Luckily, we've got a buy in between there, Rob, to save up our energy. And, Wrigley Field, unless the Cubs are using it that night, it's going to be, and they might, they're thinking.
What happens in that case?
I'm sure it goes to
Ryan.
It has to at that point. I don't think the Cubs will say, yeah, we got game 7 tonight of the World Series, but you're going to have to, make sure you rub out the infield for that game.
Play it at the White Sox, whatever that is, whatever their was a guaranteed rate.
Yeah, hopefully nobody brings any guns in their fat rolls like what happened last week. And
you never know what you're going to get at a White Sox game.
Yeah, everybody bring disco records, and I love it. I have Iowa winning 38-0. Northwestern is dead team walking. Pat Fitzgerald out. You knew that at least he had a semblance of what was going to go on with Iowa. This team just, I think they're going to get pulverized on Sunday at Rutgers. So I think they might be winless. If not, maybe they'll win a non-conference game. But I think they're going to be in really struggle this year.
I've got Iowa 42-3.
Okay,
in that one. So we both see very lopsided.
Yeah.
Very lopsided outcome there, but definitely interested to see the Hawkeyes play at Wrigley Field. That's going to be kind of cool. So hopefully it's not cool as in temperature cool while my ass is on the sideline shooting photos. November 11th, Rutgers comes to Iowa City. That vaunted Rutgers attack. We'll see here. Shiano's been building. The question was, could he come back and replicate what he did the first time around? Certainly different circumstances, conference-wise, opponents-wise, divisionally for them. We'll see. We'll have an idea before they get here what type of progress, if any, he's been able to make with the program.
This is a pivotal year for Rutgers. I wrote about them and had a lot of your New Jersey brethren come after me before it. But the one thing I can respect about him is that they play hard. Yeah, that they play for him. They're not an easy team to beat. At least physically. I don't think they're a good team, and I think they might be borderline a bowl team potentially. I think they're probably like 4.5 to 5 win type of team. I don't know if you.
They are 3.5.
3.5.
3.5 FanDuel, 4.5 MGM.
I might go.
You like the over there?
I like the over on 3.5.
Yeah, I do
not
too.
Necessarily on the 4.5.
I don't know what their non-con is like, but
I have that here somewhere, but I don't care enough to look.
Northwestern is 2.5, by the way.
Yeah, I would expect that to be.
Take the under.
I take the under on that. I mean, unless they can win 2. Well, yeah, even then 2 non-conference games. I can't see them playing anybody in the. But when you're looking at, I have Rutgers. Iowa beating Rutgers 34-10 anyway.
I forgot to roll out the Minnesota over under. It's 7.5 at FanDuel and 7 at the other 2. So that's another team that is predicted to win 7.
Yeah, and they've got the toughest schedule of the West. I mean, they've got to play both Michigan and Ohio State, and same thing with Purdue. So that's why both of those are kind of lower than you might expect. But Rutgers, here's the thing: they play Northwestern, then Temple at home. They play Virginia Tech. So, and then after that, at Michigan, and then Wagner. And Wagner was 1-10 last year, so that they're going to win that game decisively. For them, they got to end the season pretty tough. Ohio State, at Iowa, at Penn State, and then Maryland. So that's what's they got to win probably one of those games to get to a bowl, and I don't see it happening in Iowa City.
I've got Iowa 23-13 in that one. I don't know if Rutgers can score 13, but I'll revisit that when we get to November.
Yeah.
Illinois at Iowa. This is November 18th.
Yeah, this is it's it. Again, like last year, I expect this to be a defensive battle. We don't know exactly what kind of Illinois team it's going to be out of the gate, because Illinois was, last year had unreal secondary with Weatherspoon and Jertavius Martin and Sidney Brown, and then they had Chase Brown on offense and had some really big pieces up front. But now they're losing some pieces. They'll lose their quarterback. They're starting another quarterback. So Illinois could go back into the rough area that it once was, or it, what they're banking on with Brett Bielema is maintain and go forward. And I expect them to be physical and play hard, if at minimums. And sometimes that's enough. I don't think so in this case, but I do think it's going to be a really physical nut grinder, and so I think Iowa wins. I have 13-9. This is my Minnesota pick
that you made. I've got Illinois winning this one. We've talked about it before, that matchups make fights, and Illinois he has a way about matching up well with Iowa, whether he's been at Wisconsin or Illinois. And even 2 years ago when he wasn't able to be in Kinnick Stadium because of COVID, testing positive for the virus, Illinois gave Iowa in his first season everything it wanted. Charlie Jones was the hero in that game to kind of get Iowa going. But that was a tough game. And I'm picking my shot here just based on matchups. I agree with you. Illinois has a lot to replace, but I think at this stage of the season, Bielema's recruited pretty well, that I think they're going to be on the upswing by the time they get to this point of the schedule. I could be wrong on that, but I think he's built a solid foundation there. But again, like the Wisconsin, the Minnesota, and this game, I definitely, either way, I could see it going either way in all these cases. And being a smart ass, I picked Illinois to win this game 6-2.
6-2. I do.
Hopefully somebody scores a touchdown after last year.
Yeah, last year I labeled it the best defensive struggle or most offensively inept contest in 2022. And when you look at the defenses, they were the top 2 scoring defenses in the country.
Yep. And
they played good teams. So it wasn't like, even though that day it looked like, oh God, what, especially with Iowa, that offense looked brutal, but actually they moved the ball. They just had some really stupid, I think that was Brian's worst play calling game, honestly. And the execution took place before the game.
Yeah. And we finish up, Scott, Black Friday in Lincoln. Congrats to the Huskers for that volleyball exhibition last night. It wasn't an exhibition game, but the scene was incredible. Congratulations to them. As a volleyball dad, it was cool to see. And we know we'll have a packed house when Iowa gets there on Black Friday for football, Scott. I've got Iowa winning this game 28-16. I'll be completely honest with you. Looking forward to seeing Nebraska tonight. I really don't know what we're going to get from Matt Rule in year one.
I don't either. There was so much hype around the opening of the Scott Frost era.
Right.
And I think everybody, Iowa fans too, were like, okay, they're probably going to come back. Whether they're that, and back is different than back. It's more like just be a competitive team. Yeah. Win 8, 9, 10 games once in a while, or regularly, at least 8. And they were nothing close to that. They haven't had a winning season since 2016. They're the only Power 5 team not to be in a bowl game the last 6 years.
Close losses. Too many close losses.
Right. They're the best 3-9 team of all time, right? But yeah,
can't get through a podcast talking about Nebraska without taking a few shots.
Yeah, well, but in this case, it just seems to be always close anymore. There a couple years there, it was just a blowout, and then it's gotten really close. And this year I have Iowa win in 23-21. 2 years ago, they had a 15-point second half deficit they came back from. Last year, they were down 24-0 and almost pulled it out, or at least came close, but there's just too many pieces missing. So I got this 23-21 over there, but it could go either way, as we know. It could go, they could be flatlining, wait till next year, or they could actually be decent, and Iowa could be flatlining. But Iowa's got a better offense than it's had in a while. At least it appears to be the case. So I expect Iowa to pull that one out.
So to recap, overall, let me look up Nebraska's win total. You know what that is?
I guess it's probably like 5.5, but
let's see. 6.5.
Okay.
Across the board.
All right.
Got them going bowling.
Yeah. Well, they've got some, their non-conference, they should be 3-0 there. They play, but they should have been 3-0 a lot of times. At Colorado's bad. Dion's the neat story. It's bad, and after a couple of games, everybody will quit writing about him. Northern Illinois and La Tech are not great teams either. They won a combined 6 games last year, so their non-conference teams were 7-29. So even Nebraska had a better record than they did. So I think, and then you look across the way, they're playing Maryland, Michigan, and who's the other one? Michigan State. So, yeah, this is a year that they could get to 6, maybe 7 wins. I could see that, but I also don't know what you're going to get. So I have Iowa and Indianapolis. It looks like you don't at 9-3 and 6-3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I don't know that because I didn't go through the other, schedules in the West. I think 6-3 could win the West, depending on tiebreakers and things like that. So I haven't extended out my view over who's going to win the division. Wisconsin, I believe, is favored to win the division, if I'm not mistaken. I looked last night. I think and Iowa's number 2, obviously, in terms of what the odds are. But I think it's a toss-up. I think you could throw Minnesota in there. I'm an Illinois. I'm a Bielema guy, so I think Illinois could have a chance if things break right for it. But that's probably it. I don't see Nebraska, Purdue, and certainly not Northwestern winning it. I definitely would have Wisconsin and Iowa in one tier, and then probably Minnesota and Illinois in the next tier, or maybe Minnesota in the tier, then Illinois or something like that. And then those other teams, I don't see them factoring into this thing. So we'll see how it's a matter. They could lose to Wisconsin and still, Purdue lost to Iowa last year at home and then still won the division. So,
yeah. Here the schedules are, Iowa and Wisconsin have the most advantageous schedules. They only play one of the elite in the East, Iowa at Penn State, which is more difficult than Ohio State at Wisconsin, although Ohio State's never been easy for anybody to play. But,
I actually would give Iowa a better chance at Penn State than Wisconsin beating Ohio State at home.
It could be, yeah. It's a night game at Camp Randall. You never know what thing. They've got the one thing with the Ohio State is lacking this year is a veteran quarterback. Now that is they've been able to turn that leaf over and been pretty good at it. So who knows if Kyle McCord is the guy? But every now and then people get a stinker at quarterback too. Yeah. And like Alabama and Ohio State before the recent run had question marks at quarterback, or you had your Craig Krenzels of the world. And
even at Georgia, they were trying every way they could to get Stetson Bennett out of there.
Yeah.
Initially. And he just wasn't giving up the spot. No. And he forced their hand because we need to get a 5-star in there, we need to get a guy that but it's not always, not always the path to success.
And, the other thing with Georgia is that they had Justin Fields, and they decided to play, I think it was Jake Fromm, it's kind of defensive coaches and offensive line coaches think more about the leadership and think more about keeping the guy there. We've seen it here at Iowa. reluctance to make moves except when they're really, really necessary. So I think, that could be the case. That was the case in Georgia because they had Justin Fields and he was fantastic and they let him go and went to Ohio State. Now, but Wisconsin and Iowa have those. And then, like Purdue and Minnesota have to play Ohio State and Michigan. And the thing is, when you play those two teams, you're automatically almost saying they're both losses. It would take a Herculean effort for them to win. And then they also have to play everybody else.
Right.
So they have to play Iowa, they have to play Wisconsin. Illinois is kind of in the middle of that. I mean, they're more in the Wisconsin and Iowa vein with Penn State at home. So actually they've got it slightly easier. They do got to go to Maryland. I think that's not a bad team. I mean, they've got a good offense. And they've got to go on the road to Minnesota and Iowa. So I think Illinois is capable, but they also have a new quarterback who really hasn't played, a lot of changeover. So that's why I kind of look at it as Iowa, Wisconsin, and I have Iowa winning that game. I have Iowa losing 24-20 to Michigan and Indianapolis, and then playing in the Citrus Bowl and playing Alabama down there.
That would be good. I think people would embrace that as a positive season. Obviously, you're going to have people that will bitch and moan unless it's 12-0, then 13-0, and then 15-0. But
right.
Let's do some picks, Scott. Let's get them in here before we get out.
Okay, sounds good. And as we know, this is Labor Day weekend, so we've got quite a few games. We won't go over last year's, Rob, just to save you the.
I appreciate that.
But
and if to the uninitiated here, while we do this, if you go against my picks, you're probably going to come out. You'll be in good shape. You'll be adding to your bank account instead of subtracting. or in other words, go with Scott.
All right. Well, tonight it's the kickoff here, and it's Minnesota -7 playing host to Nebraska. So this is a really fascinating.
What's the total in that game? Do you have that?
I don't have the total. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's seen as a defensive or offensive. I would think defensive with Minnesota, but you never know. Tanner Morgan's finally gone. I think he went right from quarterback to Social Security.
You're right. And in the West Division, there's only one quarterback returning that's starting that wasn't a transfer, and it's Minnesota's Ethan Kaliakmanis. So I'm going to go with Nebraska. I think if it was just because of the spread, if it was
got him winning or just covering,
just covering, because that's all we're doing, right?
Yeah, I was just interested if you thought that Nebraska could pull the upset.
No, I think it could be. I think 7's about the right number. If it was 7.5, I'd take Minnesota, or I'd take Nebraska for sure. If it was 6.5, I probably would take Minnesota, but I'm going to go with Nebraska.
Not doing it, man. I am not doing the Lucy football thing again with Nebraska. I've been sucked in before. I'm taking the Gophers, throwing the 7. Okay. I know what I'm getting in Minnesota. I have no idea what I'm getting in Nebraska.
Okay. I take the Gophers even up, but I'm not going to take them in this. So,
You can tease it, that number down.
Yeah, exactly. Tomorrow, Central Michigan at Michigan State. Michigan State -14. I'm still going to take the mighty Spartans on this one. I wasn't sold on Central Michigan, even with Jim McElwain as the head coach.
I'm looking for the total in this. Why can't I find that? Anyway, I'll look it back at that in a minute. Oh, here's the total. Do the total for this Nebraska-Minnesota game. 42.5.
Okay.
It ranges from 42.5 to 43.5. So they expect some points.
They do.
See where that lands. I will take the Spartans as well. I don't think much of Central Michigan.
All right. Yep. And let's see. We'll skip Iowa. We'll just go to Iowa last if that's kosher with you. The next one, East Carolina at Michigan. Michigan -35.5. It's on the Peacock Network, which I'm sure everybody will enjoy talking about this year and acquiring to watch games. I am going to go with East Carolina. No Jim Harbaugh, no Sharon Moore. That's a lot of points. I just don't. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I don't like these early season non-conference games with Michigan and Ohio State throwing like 5, 6 touchdowns. It's crazy. I'm with you. I'm going to take the points here. Certainly could see Michigan just putting 70 up too, but I'm gonna say without Harbaugh, like you said, I think maybe some hiccups here and there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, something in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 45 to 14, or 13, backdoor cover type of thing. But I think they win and win decisively. I just don't know that they cover. So that means they're a good team, not a great team, right?
Yeah.
The next one we have on BTN, which is Fresno State at Purdue. Purdue minus 3.5. I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to go with Fresno winning this game with the points and outright in Ryan Walter's debut. I think this might be a tough year for the Boilers.
What's the total? What's the number?
Well, minus 3.5. I don't have the totals in front of me.
Okay. That's what I meant. I meant the point spread 3.5. I hate that hook. I'm going Big Ten here. I'll take Purdue.
Okay. All right. We differ on this one too. Ohio State minus 30 at Indiana. Ohio State has the best player in the country, in my opinion, and it's probably the second to third best receiver. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? But this one's different. These are different ones. I'm going to go with Ohio State to cover, win big. I don't have the total, but I could see this one being 66 to 30 or something like that.
The total is 59.
Okay. Wow, I have a way over on the total.
Among Big Ten coaches, Tom Allen's seat's the hottest, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So this is important for them, right? If they come out and get embarrassed, that could just set a tone for, and grease the skids for his exit. I'm not sure they could hire somebody that's a better fit than him, just in terms of, his background in that state, but he's not gotten it done. I thought he had turned the corner, and then it crashed again. I will take Ohio State and throw the 30. I think Indiana's in for a long year.
Yeah, they went in the portal hard. They lost like 20 players and picked up 25 players, something like that. So I think that could be a rough one. Here's kind of our free parking one because there's no line. Towson at Maryland. So I guess it's pick 'em, right? So I'm going to go with Maryland. I'm not even going to mess with that.
Yeah, same. I throw whatever points you're throwing. If points come on, if they end up putting a line on the game, I'll still take Maryland.
Okay. Buffalo at Wisconsin minus 28. I've got I'm going Wisconsin. I think they're gonna roll in this opener at home. It's gonna be big and they're gonna look impressive, and everybody's gonna have them waltzing through the West until they start messing around with some decent teams.
Interesting total on this one, Scott. It's like 54, 55, kind of in that range. So they're expecting a lot of points in that one. And what's the number?
28.
Oof, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, I'll go with Wisconsin. I don't know much about Buffalo this year. What they got going on out in Western New York?
I don't know a whole lot either. I
mean,
they're yeah, they always do.
Wings.
They're going to have a new stadium out there, but it's not going to be for them. It's going to be for the other football team in Buffalo, but that's going to be a little ways in the future. This one is going to be more interesting than I think people realize. Toledo at Illinois. Illinois minus 9.5. I'm going to go with the Toledo Mud Hens here.
Yeah, as much as I've been pimping Illinois, I think Illinois is going to play a lot of close games. I think it's going to lean very heavily on its defense and not, particularly early in the season, just play conservative offense, don't make mistakes. And I think that lends itself to taking the points in this situation with Toledo, which is a good football program.
Yeah. So you pick Toledo then?
I'll take Toledo and the points.
Okay. Yeah, they're one of the favorites in the MAC, so that's kind of where I went there. All right, West Virginia at Pennsylvania State minus 20.5. I'm going to take Penn State. I think they're going to come out and they might give up some points, even though I think this is a really good defense. But I think Penn State's going to waltz on Saturday night.
This is the NBC game, right? The first NBC game. Yeah, I'll take Penn State at home at night.
All right. Sunday afternoon, you've got Northwestern at Rutgers. Rutgers minus 6.5. I'm going to take Rutgers now, and I would take them if it's 10.5. So
I might take them if it was 14.
Yeah, I think this is this would
that
be a
number's
line.
fishy, man. Doesn't that seem like they're trying to draw in there? I don't like that.
Yeah,
but I will still throw the points. I cannot back Northwestern in any way, shape, or form right now.
Yeah, I just don't know that I can get to there. So not in any shape with Northwestern. I would be very surprised. Now, I was surprised last year when they won in Ireland, but they still had good players. They don't have the same players they did. And finally, the game that we'll be at, Rob, and Utah State at Iowa minus 24 for the Fighting Hawkeyes. I've got Iowa winning 41-3. Now if Cade McNamara is not playing, I think it could be close to that number. If he is playing, I think it's going to exceed that number, 24. It's possible that Utah State's tempo could cause Iowa some issues, but on a hot day. But more than likely, to me, I expect Iowa's defense to give a little bit, create some turnovers and sacks, be very physical, stop the running game, and its offense, especially its offensive line, to exert its dominance. So 41-3 Hawkeyes.
I've got 30-3. So we both got the Aggies scoring 3 points, just a different total. Point wise, I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit here, whether or not Cade plays, if he plays the whole game, if he's limited at all. I think the big number will come in week 3. I think that's when they'll really explode offensively, but I would not be surprised if it goes over the 30 that I have this week as well.
Yeah, and part of it is just looking at Utah State's defense. They have 9 total returning starters. They lost some really good players in the portal. They were still, in the hundreds in categories for rushing and scoring defense. They weren't great offensively either. They were 104th in points last year. They threw the most interceptions in the country at 21 against this team. In yards per play, they were down. So, how they got to a bowl game really with these numbers is kind of surprising. But Western Michigan wasn't a whole lot better in those areas either, especially on offense. So I think this is a blowout. I think everybody goes home, and there's going to be a lot of people struggling to find things to complain about. And so they're really going to struggle for this weekend, Rob.
They'll figure something to complain about. They always do.
Unless there's an injury.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope that everybody comes out healthy out of this one, and we can get in and out of Ames as quickly as possible. We'll talk about that game next week, the big game next week in Ames. But hopefully everybody enjoys their holiday weekend, enjoys the game this weekend. Please socialize responsibly with your friends and family this weekend. Enjoy the game. Scott and I will be back to talk to you next week on the Hotspot podcast. Say goodbye.